Your Eminence, Cardinal George Pell, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you tonight to the Global Warming Policy Foundation's second annual lecture. It's my particular honor to welcome His Eminence, Cardinal Pell, the Archbishop of Sydney, and his distinguished guests, and allow me also to extend a word of welcome to the ambassadors and diplomats from more than a dozen nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the climate debate is much more than just a battle over scientific theories and environmental statistics. At its core, it's a question of which approach our societies should take in view of a serious concern that could possibly turn out to be a real problem sometime in the future. What rational societies and policymakers need to ask is, what are the most reasonable and the most cost-effective policies that neither ignore a potential problem that may possibly materialize in the distant future, nor the actual economic costs of such policies here and now? Fundamentally, these are social, ethical, and economic questions that cannot be answered by science alone, but require careful consideration by economists and social commentators. We certainly welcome the government's new realism, which in many ways reflects the public's growing skepticism. This change in public mood is likely to have other consequences too. In this week's issue of the Church Times, the weekly journal of the Church of England, Peter Forster, the Bishop of Chester and one of our trustees, and who I'm happy to say is with us tonight in the audience, wrote, "The churches have tended to follow climate alarmism with uncritical enthusiasm, but it is now time to take stock. The moral issues surrounding climate policies, as well as the underlying scientific and economic issues, are much more complex than is usually acknowledged. It is time for the churches to recognize this and to lead a debate which helps our society to a more sensible set of policies." End of quote. I believe that nobody has done more to raise these awkward questions within the Catholic Church than Cardinal Pell. It is an irony of our bewildering times that it is a courageous churchman who dares to question one of our society's most entrenched dogmas. But that is exactly what he will do tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker, His Eminence, Cardinal George Pell.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking the Global Warming Policy Foundation for the invitation to deliver this lecture. It came as a surprise, and I truly appreciate the honour. However, I'm more grateful for the existence of the Foundation and its sane and important contributions in this debate. A word or two about the structure of the talk, because I examine the issue from a number of different directions. They reflect what little expertise I have. The central part discusses the scientific claims and demonstrates, I hope, that a scientific layman can cover the base and identify the basic issues. After a brief theological introduction, I explain why I chose to write on global warming, while the central section is followed by a brief discussion of the propaganda wars, a longer discourse on the existence of the medieval warm period, and concludes with some public policy questions and reflections which have been anticipated. Sometimes the very learned and clever can be brilliantly foolish, especially when seized by an apparently good cause. My request is for common sense and more, not less. What the medievals, following Aristotle, called prudence, one of the four cardinal virtues, the recta ratio agibilium, or right reason in doing things. We might call this a cost-benefit analysis, where costs and benefits are defined financially and morally or humanly, and their level of probability is carefully estimated. Are there any long-term benefits from the schemes to combat global warming, apart from extra tax revenues for governments and income for those devising and implementing the schemes? Will the burdens be shared generally or fall mainly on the shoulders of the battlers, the poor? Another useful Latin axiom is in dubio non agitur. Don't act when in doubt. There is no precautionary principle, only the criteria for assessing what actions are prudent. When Galileo was placed under house arrest, primarily because of his claim that the earth moved around the sun, he is said to have muttered, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. The earth is moving around the sun. As for Galileo, so for us. The appeal must be to the evidence, not to any consensus, whatever the levels of confusion or self-interested coercion. First of all, we need adequate scientific explanations as a basis for our economic estimates. We also need history, philosophy, even theology, and many will use, perhaps create, mythologies. But most importantly, we need to distinguish which is which. Thank you.